Hello and welcome back to Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, in which Craig Touch and myself, Roland Hume, chat to some interesting figures and leading lights in this wild and crazy industry of self-publishing that we are in. And today we are delighted to have a very special guest with us. It is Rosalind Tate, who is a very great fantasy author of the Shorten Chronicles, and she's here to talk to us about her a really interesting journey towards becoming a successful author and on all of the steps along that journey that it took. And I'm really excited to listen to this because I think a lot of people are going to find it very, very inspirational. So Rosalind, thank you so much for joining us. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. It's good to be here.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
Doing great. Thanks, Roland. Welcome, Rosalind. Yeah, you had contacted me about your writing journey, and we thought it would be interesting to chat because a lot of authors think of there's maybe one path to success. If they're not immediately successful, they give up or they sort of get discouraged. But there's all sorts of different paths to success. And when you are writing, and you had said this to us sort of earlier, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? So your success builds as you grow and as you continue in your career. And you only started writing a couple of years ago, right? So, I think you said 2020, is that right?
Oh no, that's when I published.
Sorry. That's when you published. Okay.
I wrote my first book. It took me 5 years to write it.
Well, and that's fine, right? But you didn't publish it till 2020.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And now here we are, and you've sold already 15,000 copies, a million page reads just on book one alone. And so, that's pretty good success, by any metric. And in just a couple of years with only 3 books behind you, I think that a lot of authors would love to have those kind of results. So we wanted to talk to you about your journey and how you got there and what you've done and all that stuff. So so 5 years. So tell us all about that.
Okay. First of all, though, I'd say that the great thing about being an indie is it's not a one-shot thing. So if you make a mistake or you don't sell as many as you thought you were going to do, or you wrote the wrong sort of thing, it's not the end of the world. You can start again. You can change. And I'd love to say that I got it all right and I was just knowing exactly what I was doing, but I didn't. So basically, I've always wanted to write vaguely, but things got in the way, family, career. And then I thought, no, if I'm going to do this, I really am going to do it. And so I thought, right, I got this idea in my head. And I was very excited and I wrote it and I thought, right, I'll just send it to an editor, just to check, a couple of typos or whatever. And I got this report back and it was pages and pages. And I could just summarize it really. This is utter rubbish. You need to go away and learn how to write a book. And I thought, how can this be so? I've read thousands of books. But after I got over the shock, I went away and learned how to write a book. And after a lot of editors, I finally got to the finished product after 5 years. I learned that editors are like frogs. You have to kiss a lot before you find your prince, or in my case, my princess. She got the book. She's incredibly fierce. She's passionate about editing. And she refused to let me get away with anything, which is great. I'm still with her. So I wanted to do it right from the beginning, and I thought, right, I must learn how this works. I'd originally wanted to go trad, and like everyone, I thought that was how it was. I knew nothing about the publishing industry, and the reason why I went indie was that about 4 years before I published, I wandered into Festival of Writing in York, which is in the north of England, and there was this workshop about self-publishing, and I thought, yeah, vanity publishing, and I sat down. And within about 15 minutes, my jaw was on the floor. And what had sent my jaw to the floor was the maths. And math doesn't normally do that for me, but it was the royalties difference between traditional and indie publishing. And I thought, my goodness. But the other thing that made me change my mind about not querying was a lady who was already traditionally published and was looking to get out because she wasn't happy. So that's why I sort of really fixed on indie publishing. But I then started to realize that there's an awful lot to learn. I did Mark Dawson's 101 course. I think it's called Launchpad now. They just changed the name. It's a big course. It took me 6 months to work through step by step, but I did everything I should do and I got on with it. And I set up my mailing list and I put my link in the back of the book and I put my website up and I thought, yes, I'm ready to go. And I published and nothing happened. And I thought, oh, what's going on here? I had a promo list, a newsletter lined up, wasn't expensive, didn't require reviews, Book Doggy. I had 12 sales. And I thought, oh, that's really good, really good. I've got to do something else. And then I realized, and even though I knew rationally, one part of my brain knew that I had to market, knew that I had to advertise, I thought I was special, that I was different, that somehow lightning would strike and people would find the book. Of course it didn't. So I then had to sit back and think, right, what am I going to do? And one of my author friends said, look, it's very competitive, you're not going to make any money, you need to have an alternative strategy. So I did a business plan, in inverted commas, and I decided visibility was what I needed. I wasn't going to make any money, I just had to invest in this business. And that's what I started to do. It was just a bit of a shock, really, the sort of reality of it when it goes up there and nothing happens. I wanted to stick with my story. I knew it was a good story, and my editor believed in it as well. And it was at that stage, just before I published, that I looked at the Amazon categories. And I realized, with hindsight, I should have looked at the Amazon categories before I decided what I wanted to write. But it was too late. I was committed to this. And luckily for me, time travel romance is a thing. Time travel is a thing on the genres. So what I did right was get appropriate cover that said fantasy, time travel, portal, which is either a door or a mirror. And I did the 3 covers together. I had them done. I didn't do them myself. I can't draw for toffee. And I wanted to have a cohesive brand because I knew I had to write a series. So I got the covers sorted out. And then I thought, right, how am I going to do this? So I looked at social media, as you do, because you think you've got to do social media. And I realized after about 2 months that I was wasting my time, in my opinion. I hadn't realized that Facebook and Instagram were monetized. So when I sent my post, which were beautiful posts, to my 34 followers saw them again and again and again, because Facebook wouldn't push them because I wasn't paying. So that was a great weight lifted on my mind. Didn't have to worry about that. So I post about 4 times a year. And my followers in Facebook only started to go up when I started testing Facebook ads. But I was relaxed about that. I thought, right, I'm going to get on and just do everything step by step. So I learned about BookWeb ads and I tested them for about 6 weeks, really $5 a day. And it took me a while to get the right picture, the right comp authors. But I think messing about with BookBub ads played quite a role in me getting a BookBub deal February after I published. And for anyone watching this who doesn't know what a BookBub deal is, it's a really big deal. I thought it was a practical joke when I got the email. So that really, really helped. And that's what really started the sales, I think. Of course, BookBub has lots of readers who love bargains. So it's not kind of, you can't do all year round advertise with BookBub. So I looked at the other 2 to click things, right, click to pay rather. Facebook, I'd heard bad things about Facebook, well, having the account chats. I thought, no, I'll just do Amazon ads. That must be easier. No. I was spreadsheet girl. I tell you, Excel, pivot tables, really. And after 5 months, I know how Amazon works and how it doesn't. And I should have waited till I had at least 4 or 5 books out. For me, it was expensive and inefficient. It did drive sales. It drove an unknown number of organic sales. But I realized that for me, with just 2 or 3 books out, it was not sustainable. I had lucky enough to have a one-to-one chat with Janet Margot. She actually set up the Amazon ads on Amazon, and she's very generous for the time, and she talks to people like me. And she looked at my Amazon dashboard and said, oh yes, absolutely fine, absolutely fine. I said, look, I'm I'm targeting these ASINs, the ebooks only of my comp authors. I'm getting no impressions. What am I doing wrong? The bots must know that this is my top comp author. And Janet goes, no, they don't know. Why should they know? I'm going, I thought they did know. So I don't know what actually the mechanics of it are, but it is mysterious to me still. And I think it's sometimes there is an element to just keep on going with it. But I decided to stop doing Amazon ads and concentrate on Facebook ads. I'm still testing them. I'm still doing $5 a day. And it is a depressing thing that you do probably have to pay for paid advertising. And what I'm finding difficult is that it's the testing, which costs money. Yes, it's only $5 a day, but you're obviously paying $5 a day to find out which ads do work and which ones don't. But I think it's worth it because I go to conferences now in person as well as Zooming, and people say, no, you need to keep on with it until you find the best combination and then scale up. So that's the scale. That's the sort of state, where I am now doing that. The other thing I would say is you get to the stage where you had this wonderful excitement of publishing your book, and then you find you're actually doing the marketing in the afternoon, writing in the morning. And when you're doing the marketing in the afternoon, you think, this is a job. This isn't a hobby anymore. This is a job. And there are some bits I like and some bits I don't like. And I've just had to accept that I will never know everything. I will never know really what I'm doing. So I was really pleased with my mailing list, for example. I had 2,000 people on my mailing list. And then I read your email, Hidden Gems, about people who buy books as opposed to people who never buy books or on your mailing list. And I thought, I think I better check that. And I did check it, and I gave them a chance to keep on the Readers Club, my list, or unsubscribe. People who weren't clicking, who had never clicked, not even on the free book to join the Readers Club. I've now got 693 people on my Readers Club.
But at least you know the good ones.
Yes. Yes, but it was a bit of a soul-destroying exercise, but I am glad I did it, obviously.
Right, and
yes,
I mean,
you're always learning.
Yeah, and the thing is with the lists, like you're probably using a service, right? Like MailChimp or one of those kind of things. Yeah. So you're paying for the size of your list generally, right? So you don't want, even aside from the fact that they're useless and they're not clicking on things or they're not buying or whatever, I mean, it's costing you money to send them emails, right? So it's always good to clean that list and keep it,
No, I got complacent.
Yeah. But I mean, listen, you started with what, 34 people on your list, and now you were at
34 on the following me on Facebook.
Oh, okay. But still, I mean, everyone starts at 0 on their mailing list. You got to 2,000 people like that, and now you're at 700. When you launch another book, that's 700 people that would hopefully buy it, or close. Obviously not everybody, but a lot of them will, which will help your ranking right away, right? And sales and money.
And I didn't follow my own advice. I knew I had to be patient. I knew I should grow it organically. I use book sweeps as well as get people signing up through my website and back of the book. And I've found book sweeps absolutely excellent. A lot of them do stick around. But I was tempted by another email from another site. I thought, okay, I'll try them. And I knew I should have known there was something wrong when I downloaded the list of emails. There was 3,000, and I thought, gosh, that's quite a lot of emails. And as I say, a very small percentage are still around. So that was a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to get your list filled with people that are interested in your book specifically, whether they're buying it or not, right? Because as that article that we posted by Roland said, is like there is value to the people that don't buy your books but they still like it, right? You can use them for other things, right? As part of your art team, as your street team, there's all sorts of different ways to use those people. But when you're marketing, when you're building, if you do decide to go to a Facebook advertising, you would use those people that are buyers to build out your lookalike list, and then that's how you optimize for Facebook, right? There's a lot to unpack there, though. I mean, thanks for giving us all that that background on how it all went down. So it took you 5 years to write that first book.
Yes.
Which is, hey, listen, that's the way it works for most, I think, people. You you spend a lot of time figuring it all out. But obviously, since you first published 2 years ago and you now have 3 books, it didn't take 5 years to write books 2 and 3. So you clearly improved, right?
Yeah, I still make mistakes. I'll tell you a secret now. I'm sure nobody else is watching this. I was so rubbish with the first book.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
Wow, that's vote
I
of
hope no one's
confidence.
watching it. I was so rubbish with the first book that the first book was like 200,000 words. And I realized I had to cut it in 2. And so Rosalind thought, oh, that's fine. I'll just cut it in half. But of course you can't. You've got to have the character arc and all the rest of it.
It's so funny. So people don't appreciate that. So many people say that. They're like, oh, well, you just put the book into 2 halves. And it's like, are you aware that there is such a thing as a story circle where you've got to have the arcs, they've got to have a satisfying conclusion. You can't, it's not a lump of sausage.
So I managed to do it, but and I was basically re-editing it. I was editing the second book, so that it didn't take me too long, and the third book was easier. It does get easier, I think.
And I'm sure, you know, when you gave it to your editor, she wasn't like, with the third book, this is rubbish. You know, she didn't. It wasn't like the first time. So yeah, I mean, just like with publishing, the writing part gets easier, the publishing gets easier, the marketing gets easier. The more you do, the more you learn. It's a constant, like you said, it's a job, right? It's a full-time job, and that's one of the reasons why some people still decide, hey, even though I'm not going to make nearly as much money, I'll go the trad route because I don't want to do the work. All that work. Although these days, a lot of the trad publishers are pushing some of the work back onto the authors anyway, some of the marketing and advertising and all that. But in general, you know, it is a full-time job. You got to learn that stuff. That course took you 6 months to do. Yeah. I mean, it's a big course, like, you know, and it goes through everything, and clearly it taught you a lot of things, and it was worth it. But you know, it's a commitment. It's a full-time commitment sometimes. Actually, are you writing full-time, or do you have a separate job?
I have a part-time bookkeeping job. And it is very part-time. It's about 2 days a week. So I can't cling to that as an excuse at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is pretty full-time. And I'm not averse to traditional publishing at all. And I think for some indie authors, you know, way down the line, if they're already successful, I can see why they would accept, for example, a print-only deal like Bella Andre. Yes. And sometimes the decisions are very difficult. So I was approached by a traditional, very well-known audiobook publishing company. And I spent a long time in my past life. I was a lawyer, and I read the contract, and we negotiated. And I was really conflicted because I thought if I give them the audiobooks, I lose control of it. So in the end, I didn't go with them. I used a UK local to me company, Chatterbox. They deal with people from America and everything else. So I still now have the rights over the audiobooks. But it was a difficult decision. It wasn't a sort of no-brainer at all.
Well, like you said,
like you made the right decision.
Yeah, and you said you went to that conference or whatever and heard about the math, and that's kind of what it breaks it all down, is when people look at the numbers and be like, oh, I can earn this much more by self-publishing than I can by publishing, as long as I'm willing to do the work and learn stuff. And like you said, vanity publishing, you know, people our age are familiar with that concept, and it sort of like soured a lot of people on what self-publishing was when Amazon turned it into more of what it is now. Mm-hmm. But you know, younger people that aren't as familiar probably aren't even aware of that. So I think, you know, there is still from an older generation there. I think there is still a bias towards the trad publishing because of the damage, I think, that vanity publishing did to sort of the idea of self-publishing. But I think as, you know, time goes on, you know, vanity publishing doesn't really exist anymore. It shouldn't. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's some people out there still falling for stuff like that, but I mean, there's no reason for it anymore. So I don't think it's a thing that that really sours people on the idea of self-publishing. So as time goes on, I think it's just being accepted more and more as like just the one way to do business, maybe a better way to do the business, right? So yeah, I think you definitely went the right route. My opinion.
And it's funny, you're so self-deprecating, but like I'm listening to your journey, and it's almost like a mirror of the journey that I went on, and everything that you did wrong, you did right, because you have to learn how to do these things, and you can only learn by trying and failing, and then trying something different and failing, and then trying something different and being slightly more successful. And I think you've just had a prodigious amount of success with 3 books. I mean, 15,000 people chose to spend their money on your book, even though it's not because they knew you, it's not because they were doing you a favor or anything. They saw your book and it interested them enough that they parted with their own money for it. And I think that's amazing. So I think you should be very proud of yourself, and I'm sure there are lots of aspiring authors listening to this podcast going like, I want to get to 15,000 people. And it's and you did everything right in that. I always believe that anybody has a potential to be a successful self-published author if they learn the craft of writing. That's the tricky bit, and then follow the process of successful self-publishing, which you did. And advertising might not have worked for you, but your launch strategy very clearly did. Working with BookBub very clearly did. You found your own route, and that's amazing.
And that moment, I mean, I can remember it now, even more than getting the proof physical copy in the post, was the first email that I received from a reader. And it was, I'm a doctor in Chicago. And they said, your book took me away from COVID, thank you so much. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I then came home that this person had read my book. I didn't know them. I hadn't slept with them. I wasn't related to them. And they'd read my book, wow.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
That's one of the most gratifying things. Sure, we need the money, we want the money, we do, some of us do it for the money, but at some point when you get that feedback and you hear that somebody enjoyed your book, it was an escape for them, and so much so that they even reach out to you and tell you, there's really nothing better than hearing that to an author, I think.
Absolutely.
It's almost like an incredible privilege to think that, like, these people, everyone always dismisses people who don't pay for books and they always download the books, but when you buy a book, you basically have to buy it twice. You buy it with your money, and then you have to buy it with your attention, spending the time to read it. And so to imagine 15,000 people not only gave you money but also sat down and read the book, they gave hours of their life to follow the journey that you sent them on, which is like, it's mind-blowing when you think about it.
I always think it's just a piece of paper. In essence, it's a dead tree until somebody, and each reader, I don't know how this happens, but each reader sees something slightly different in it. And when they start reading any book, it comes alive. It becomes real to them. So it becomes manifest in the world, if you like.
But it's interesting, it's slightly different for them, and yet it's the same. I heard someone describe it as meditating in someone else's mind, which I've always loved. Because you conjured up this story, and then 15,000 people have walked the path that you imagined. And that's an incredibly intimate experience when you think about it. It's like they've been inside your head.
But that's why this is the hardest thing. No, that is why this is the hardest thing I've ever done, because they are inside your head. And that's why you don't want it to be personal. The book is, in the end of life, it is a product, but it isn't really, because it's come out of your head. You're putting yourself out there. So it is very difficult.
Yeah. You're standing in judgment of people, that read your book, and whether you filled it with personal anecdotes or it's your personal writing and it's your expression of your ideas. If people don't like it, that's why a lot of authors take that personally, right? And when they like it, we also take it personally. And it's great when they like it, and it's hurtful sometimes when they don't. But you learn eventually too that you're never going to please everybody, and there's always people that don't feel the same way, don't like the same things, and so you got to sort of eventually learn to let the bad reviews or the people that don't like it roll off your back. But that definitely isn't an easy thing. But it sounds like, you know, that's obviously not the majority, right? So you got people buying it, and have you looked at the numbers to be able to tell what your sort of your read through is? You know, whether or not people are going, at what rate people are going from book 1 to book 2 to book 3?
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually. There's a big difference between the Kindle Unlimited read through and the buy read through. The Kindle Unlimited read through is 60%, which is fabulous, obviously. But the buy read through is 28% from book 1 to book 2 at the moment. Which
Are
is
you including the free giveaways in that, or is that
no,
just the
no?
purchases?
The free giveaway is a short story which is exclusive to my list, to my Readers Club, and it's never going to be on sale anywhere else. And it basically, if you read the first book and then you read the prequel, you see the first book in a different light. I wanted to give my people who joined my list, actually wanted to give me their email. I wanted to give them something exclusive and special. Because they're obviously very important to me.
Right.
I mean, going back to what you were saying about, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. You were going to say something.
And going back to what you were saying about in your head, I mean, I always thought it was this fancy thing like the author's voice, but I realized it wasn't. When my sister said to me, when I read your book, it was like you were talking to me. I was thinking, oh, right, okay. So she recognized it was me, and she would have known it was me, even if she hadn't known it was me.
I think you can't help but make books personally, even if you're like the most cynical person, you consider books products and you're like following the thing, you end up having to put parts of yourself in just to fill the gaps. I mean, if you're going to say, oh, I'm going to write a big city romance, then you're probably going to think of a big city that you've been to, and then you're probably going to go to the places in the story that you went to. So you can try and be as detached from it as you want to be, but at the end of the day, you can't help but see everything through the filter of your own experiences.
Yeah, and you're going to have, you know, your own personal views on things that are going to come out that way. I mean, unless you're really consciously trying to write a book that is completely different than what you personally feel, or that the characters are different than you and different than everybody you know. Like, that's not generally how it's done. We draw from our experiences, the people we know, and the characters mirror sort of how we see ourselves, or how we want to see ourselves, or how, you know, what our belief systems are, you know, other than when you're writing a villain or something, hopefully. but yeah, like, well, right. But hopefully they're not mirrors of yourself. I don't know. Right. But yeah, like, I think, you know, that's why it is so personal when, you know, people like it, dislike it. Right. So when you did the first book, you did the second book at the same time, sort of, right? Because you kind of ended up, I mean, obviously, yeah, you didn't chop it in two. I'm sure there was a major rewrite there, right? Where you had to, yeah, you took it and so what was the time between book 1 and book 2?
I was so busy. Sorry, I was so busy after the publication of book 1. I literally didn't start looking at book 2 till after I published in the October book 1. I didn't start looking at book 2 till after Christmas, because I was doing loads of stuff to try and market book 1. And I know people say you shouldn't market book 1, but I wanted to. I wanted it to be in the top 50 of my subcategories, so visible. And then I started. And then I sort of got into an expectation thing with my readers. If I couldn't write any faster, I knew I should just make them expect it once a year in October. So I published the second one in October, and I had slightly more time to do it with book 3, October just gone. I'm hoping to write a bit faster, but
no, I think you did that. I think that was a great strategy, right? If you release book 2 right away, then they'll be like, "Where's book 3? Give me book 3." You know, they'd be really. You definitely want to set expectations for that, and you know, if it slips a little, it slips. So the third one just came out in October. Is that what?
Yeah, October the 10th. Yeah.
Right. So most of those numbers then are from just the first 2 books, and you're just sort of starting that process of marketing and everything for book 3. And it's hard. I mean, I don't know. So did you say that people said you shouldn't market book 1?
I think it's divided opinion. I mean, I know David Goffin, I shouldn't name him in vain, but I know that some of the experts, in inverted commas, think that you're basically just wasting your money because you've got nowhere for the readers to go on to if you haven't published book 2. And I understand that. And I was basically hoping that my readers would hang around for book 2.
So
but they are,
you shouldn't. They're saying you don't. They're not saying don't market book 1. They're saying don't market it before you have book 2 or book 3.
Yeah.
And then you market book 1, hoping they move on, because it's hard to, especially in a fantasy series where I assume that the books are not standalone, right? It's tough to market book 2 or book 3 when you're really, unless you send it out to your personal readers, that they've read 1 and 2, but when you try to actually advertise it to find a new audience, you can't really start with book 2 or book 3 because they have to start at the beginning, right?
Yeah, I wasn't very clear. What I meant was some people think that it's not worth, when you've only got the one book out, trying to market book 1 if you haven't yet got book 2 published. I don't advertise book 2 or book 3, generally speaking. I only advertise book 1.
Because you are advertising book 2 and 3 by advertising book 1. It's the only advert that's really going to work, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't know. Personally, I don't really agree with that advice. I think the problem with that is if I was a reader and I stumbled upon a series, book 2 came out, book 3, whatever, and there's no sales on book 1, I'm going to be like, I don't know, nobody cared about this for book 1. Why would I start now? Right?
I think that's a fair point. I mean, you say, people recommend not advertising if you've only got one book, but okay, so forgetting about making your money back in a profitable advert, maybe you want to advertise it to get it ranking, to get it rooted out into Amazon's infrastructure, to get reviews, to just get people joining your mailing list. I mean, okay, you might not be getting a return on your investment in terms of immediate cash, but in terms of a long-term investment, it could be huge.
Right. And you're getting those people. And if those people like your book, they're going to still be there for book 2, right? Especially if they joined your mailing list and you have a way of contacting them. So it's not wasted effort. You're still going to be able to use those people, but it's just a sort of more of a delayed result, right? So I don't know. I personally don't really agree with that advice, but okay. So it's interesting too, like you did the BookBub ads, which I know a lot of people sort of, I think there is a lot of division on whether or not, or how well those work, right? I don't know. Roland, have you even really tried any BookBub ads yourself?
I know of some people and who've been very successful with BookBub ads, but it's got a difficult learning curve in terms of you actually have to spend quite a lot of money testing different authors to see how they resonate. And you also have to always have your book in a deal. BookBub people go to get a deal. So unless you are giving a book away for free or have it at 99 cents or something, it's very difficult to get traction. So I think there are authors it works extremely well for. I don't personally use it because it doesn't work so well for me or my strategy in terms of that.
Right, but it's an interesting idea. I don't know if it's true or not, but the idea that if you use BookBub ads, you're more likely to get a BookBub feature deal, which is, like you said, the holy grail of advertising marketing efforts that every author kind of strives for, right? They have this enormous list of millions of readers that will buy your book. And because of that, it's very expensive, but also it's very hard to get onto, right? They are very picky about which ones they accept. So it's great, and it's I mean, that's kudos to you that you got one. But it's actually yeah, two even better. But I'm curious whether that's true about the idea that you got them because you had the ads running, or that was just a coincidence.
I think the only way that could be is maybe your ads inspired people to follow you on BookBub, and then when BookBub saw you had so many followers, that's when that might have made a difference. But it could just be the BookBub, who are highly selective, picked your books because they're good.
Well, maybe the other factor could be that it was in a small category, time travel romance, not fantasy. So it is easier, I believe, to get into the smaller categories. I have
that makes sense.
Yeah,
I
mean, they could be doing something where they're looking at the offers that are coming in, and then they're cross-referencing it with whether they have an ad account and how much they spend, and using that as one of their criteria. It certainly wouldn't make sense for it to be the only criteria. Otherwise, people with crappy books just start a few BookBub ads and then apply and then get selected. So obviously there is also the idea that your book was good enough for them to select. So for sure, so that's great. So how many, I guess at that time you probably discounted it to 99 cents, right? Or free, right? 99 cents.
99
so how many sales did you get from that promotion? Do you remember? Or ballpark?
I got a lot more sales the day after the deal, as opposed to the day itself. I think it was 700, 900. It wasn't, massive by BookBub standards. But what I found the first time particularly was the tail was really long.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing anything and it was still selling. And I wasn't doing anything at all.
Well, okay, so there's probably a couple reasons for that. One being that their list is so big, and not everyone reads their emails the day they come in, right? So you're going to get a lot of people opening it right away, some the next day, some the next day, some. And the bigger the list, the longer that tail will be. But also because those concentrated sales boost your book up in the ranks, you then get organic sales because of them, and those will be on the tail end, right? Because that first day it's not up in the ranks, but as those sales start pouring in from BookBub, you start rising up in the ranks, and then the next day and the next day and the next day, you're still sitting there in the top 100, top 50, top 20, wherever you got, and then anyone shopping by subcategory is going to see your book, and that's really one of the main reasons why everyone wants those BookBub ads, is because of that rank boost. How high up did it get you? Where were you? Do you remember where you were before and where you ended up?
I can't remember the rank. I know that I screenshot. I was in front of Outlander and Harry Potter. So
oh, awesome.
I was having them. I mean, for 2 days or something. But I had to screenshot that.
Harry Potter is a time travel romance?
No.
It does have time travel, the time turner.
But it's fantasy.
And I guess there's romance.
Yeah, it's fantasy, and it's portal fantasy, and it's low fantasy. As you know, Harry Potter bleeds into a lot of categories where it really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And Amazon categories are a bit weird anyway.
But Outlander for sure is,
yeah.
I know that's time travel romance. So, I mean, and that's huge. They have a TV show, or a movie or whatever it is. So, to get above them, even for a brief time, to even get near them, it's awesome, right?
Yes, BookBub still works, I think, is the, even though people say it might not do. So it's been a roller coaster ride. Really has.
I think that's a very important thing to say. There are lots of people who say Amazon ads don't work, Facebook ads don't work, and it's for some people they don't work, but for other people they do work. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things. I think it's very easy to dismiss things, but maybe they just didn't work for you or for me, so to speak.
Right. And I think that's coming back to that idea that everybody's writing experience is different and their publishing experience is different, and what works for one person doesn't always work for another, but we can learn from other people, like you learn from the Dawson course. I think that probably is one of the things that allowed you to have such a strong start, even though at the very start maybe it wasn't super strong, but you knew what you had to do. And you just, maybe you thought, okay, my book is just going to sell. I won't have to advertise. And that's the way it was back when we started, in 2013 or something. Well, but it didn't last partly because of Dawson. He came out with his Facebook for authors course, and then all of a sudden, Facebook ads became much more expensive and competitive and whatever. So it just became harder and harder. But the industry was growing and there was more books and there's so much competition, like you noted before, is to get noticed now you have to do advertising and marketing. You can't succeed without it, right? People just won't find you. It's just there's too many other books out there.
What I would say though, anybody watching this is on a budget, sort of paid ads are one thing, but there is stuff still out there which you can do for free. I know I said about social media, but TikTok, if you get yourself on TikTok, you don't have to show your face. You can just do these page flip things. I call it the lottery app because it's not monetized yet. Everyone does the same sort of reels and videos and so on. And then one person's plucked from obscurity and goes viral. And if they've got their ducks in a row, that's really good. But they really aren't doing anything different from anybody else. So it's like a bolt of lightning. That said, if you're getting 200 people looking at your video, that's still 200 people, and it's for free. I know it's time consuming, but when you get used to it and you've learned the platform, I can make a video in 5 minutes.
Right.
The other social media thing I would recommend, although I'm only just starting out on it, is Pinterest. It's not the same as the other platforms.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, your post goes out. It doesn't last for 24 hours. It's there for like 2 years, 3 years. People still see it in 2 or 3 years' time. And if you've got a book that's what I call got a lot of content in it, like a historical novel or something like that, with a lot of pretty pictures that people want to know about, with little stories behind them, you can put stuff up on there, and that will drive traffic, I think. But it takes time, like everything, but it's free.
Yeah, it's really a good idea to just put your book in as many places as you can, right? You're creating different ways to get discovered, different entry points to your career, to yourself, to your product page, what have you. So yeah, as many places as you can, whether they are long-term gain, short-term gain, because you never know, like you said, what'll go viral. We did that. I don't know if you watched that podcast with an author that did a TikTok, and her book just it exploded, right? She had millions. She woke up the next morning to millions of views. Ended up, at the bestseller list. She was getting optioned for movies. Like it was crazy, right? And it was just a video she put together. She came home from the gym, did it in 2 takes, put it up just on a lark, and it wasn't even a new book. It was a book that had been out for a couple of years. So you never know what's gonna work. So you just got to keep throwing things at the wall and see what sticks, right? But I think you did it right.
You have to pay for marketing one way or another. Either you pay for advertising with money, or you pay for it with your time. And I guess the one thing is, if you are making enough money that you can put it in the background and get a return on your investment, that can work for you without you having to work for it. But I think it's the stuff people do, especially on TikTok, that is original and resonates with people. That's the really explosive stuff.
I love you can make a joke and you can just just make it funny, and I find that the ones that do best have nothing to do with your book at all. You're just making a silly video, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think, like you're saying, there's a lot of videos that are the same where people are flipping through, but I think it's when you do something a little bit different, that's what's going to have more chance of catching somebody's eye and then going viral. But often, if you can add some humor into it or something that that catches people's interest, that's the ones that are going to have the most chance to go viral, for sure.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it looks like we are running out of time. So Rosalind, we're going to have to cut the short. It's been a fascinating discussion, though, and
so quickly.
I know it really has. But I found it really because it's interesting for a lot of people who don't know where to get started, and also for people who are on the journey. Maybe they've made a couple of mistakes, and it's like everyone makes mistakes on this journey. So it's so nice of you to come and allow yourself to be vulnerable and share this, and then also have an HEA, a happy ever after, in that you've actually achieved success with it. So where can people go and find your books and find out more about you?
Just Google rosalindtate.com and my website. And in fact, if you're just starting out, I've got a 4 authors page. There's so much information out there on the internet. I've done a list of core resources. You can just work your way through them step by step, and not go mad while you do it.
Well, that's always the goal, isn't it? And Craig, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
I just think that what you did, what you figured out was really well done, really well thought out. I love these kind of episodes where we can do a sort of like a deep dive case study into an author and what they did and what their journey has been, because I think every time that other authors hear these stories, and the more varied stories that they can hear, the more that they can learn from them, the more they can realize that, you know, their path can be different or the same, but doesn't mean that, you know, they're not going to be successful. They are, like, it's just the way it is, right? Everybody's path is going to be a little bit different. And, you know, you just got to know the fundamentals and then go from there. So thanks for coming on and being so open and sharing all your success and everything you've done. And hopefully it continues on with the next books.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Rosalind, for joining us. We really appreciate that. And if you've appreciated what Rosalind had to say, make sure you drop a comment into where the YouTube video, whether you're listening to this podcast, and let us know. And also make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done already. We really appreciate you supporting us. Thank you so much, Rosalind, and we will be back next week with another episode of Fully Booked. Cheerio.